So given that Liberal policy in response to firearm-related violence has been to ban the tool itself, by that logic, as Public Safety Minister, will you be confiscating hammers next?
Are we going to be seeing a Liberal hammer buyback program soon? Goodness. I can't. Gary Anandasangari appeared before the Status of Women Committee the other day. And if he thought he was in for an easy time, he was sorely mistaken. After Connie Cody quite literally hammered him on intimate partner violence, which knocked him off balance, Larry Brock's heated exchange on the Liberal accusations of obstruction put him down for the count. Let's take a look.
As the Minister of Public Safety, do you know which weapon of opportunity is specifically used against women in cases of intimate partner violence and homicide?
Sorry, beg your pardon? What's the
specific weapon that is normally used in cases of intimate partner violence and homicide? Do you know which weapon that would be?
There are a range of weapons, including firearms.
And what is the number one?
I am Deputy Commissioner.
You don't have that number on the top of your head, Minister? Well, I can help you. According to the stats I have, 65 to 70%, it says hands contribute to violence against women by pushing, beating, or choking. And sexual assaults are up 76%. So do you know what weapon was used in the murder of Bailey McCourt?
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, Connie Cody, the common sense conservative from Cambridge. We've had the privilege of door knocking with her many times, and we are fortunate enough to be able to call her friend as well as her wonderful husband, Bill. But what an opening line of questioning. That should have been a pretty easy one for Gary Anandasangari. He's the Minister of Public Safety, and he's been called to testify at the Status of Women Committee. You're literally talking about women. And when it comes to public safety, what is the number one topic that usually comes up in this committee? As we've seen many times, intimate partner violence. So you'd think that if he was doing his job, he would have had his staff prepare some basic stats for him so that when he's asked a very, very anticipatory question, a question he should have been able to foresee coming, he should know what the number one weapon used against women actually is. And the fact that he's looking around, guys, help me, that's just so embarrassing. But what else do we expect? Gary knows nothing about guns. He knows nothing about public safety. The only thing he seems to know is that the gun buyback program won't work because that's what he told his tenant when that, broke. But oh my goodness. Can you say DEI hire? Because he was obviously not put there on merit. If he was, he probably would have been able to actually answer that question. Great job, Connie.
Sorry, what was that?
Do you know what weapon was used in the murder of Bailey McCourt?
No, I'm not aware.
Okay. Well, it was a hammer. So, in the death of Bailey McCourt, since it was a hammer that was used, did she die by the actions of the hammer or the person wielding the weapon?
I would say that in many cases, or cases of intimate partner violence, it is an individual that is responsible. There are different weapons that are used in that context. And I would say that it is a combination of the individual who is using the weapon to cause harm on an individual.
So then you agree a hammer is an inanimate tool and can only do harm through the person who intends to use it to do harm? Is that correct?
Look, I'm not an expert, Ms. Cody. I would say that I'm here to talk to you generally about the work that we're doing to
I understand
ensure
that, but can you answer my
because
question? It's a simple
appreciate-
question.
well, if I may, I appreciate where you're going with this, and what I would suggest is that...
Can you answer the question, though, sir, Minister? And all due respect, it's my time, and I think I'm asking a question. Can you answer it? Is it the hammer that does the killing, or is it the person behind the hammer?
It is a combination of both.
So the hammer can act on its own?
It is a combination of both. Okay,
So a hammer
it is
can
the
come off a
individual
shelf
who
and
has-
kill
It is
someone?
an individual who has the hammer, who can use the hammer in a way that can be very harmful.
So it's the person.
It is a combination of both.
Okay, but the person wields the hammer is what I'm asking you, which is what you're telling me.
Madam Chair, I've answered that question.
Okay.
Same old principle, folks. Reducto ad absurdum. Reducing to absurdity. It's a very, very powerful principle on exposing flaws in people's arguments. And I'm not sure if you caught it there. Okay, so the hammer flies off the shelf, and it's partially responsible. No, this is the issue, and it was interesting because I don't think Gary saw where she was going initially. And he ended up admitting, oh, yeah, well, you know, the person is responsible. But then as he talked, I think he realized that he really, really, really screwed up when he said that. And he tried to pivot all the way back to, well, you know, it's a combination. It's a combination of both. But this is where reductio ad absurdum comes in, because that's where Connie was forcing him down on that hill to die on, right? And if you're willing to die on the hill of absurdity, it's going to reveal that your argument is completely invalid. This is the problem with Gary, because he has been behind a program that he's admitted, without knowing he was admitting it, that he doesn't think it's going to work. But then he has to get back into the public eye and then support it and argue for it. That's one of the hardest things that you can do, is to argue for something that you don't believe in. Because it's very, very difficult to come up with justification for something that you truly do not believe in yourself. And that's where he's running into problems.
So given that Liberal policy in response to firearm-related violence has been to ban the tool itself, by that logic, as Public Safety Minister, will you be confiscating hammers next?
You have to laugh, folks. What's not funny is what is happening in Canada to these victims. But when you lay it out like this, because that's the logic, right? That's the logic. Okay, well, we're not going to put the people in jail that actually committed the issue, right? They can go free. They can go on bail. But we're going to actually ban the instrument. So are you going to be... Are we going to be seeing a Liberal hammer buyback program soon? Goodness. I can't.
Again, I'm not here to talk about the compensation program, Ms. Cody. I'm here to talk to you
But it has
in
to
a
do with
broader
public
sense.
safety, sir.
Well, I believe that this issue has been litigated a number of times, and I believe that this conversation,
Okay, that's not answering my question, Minister, so in all due respect, I'll continue to the next one. Will your Liberal government admit that getting dangerous offenders off the streets is a priority instead of going after law-abiding Canadians with the gun confiscation scam to protect not just women, but all Canadians? Yes or no?
I want to thank the over 22,000 people who registered, 22,000 firearms that were
My question
registered
is to
within
you,
the first
sir.
week.
Are you willing to protect the women and all Canadians by going after dangerous offenders? Yes or no?
It is part of the job that we have.
Okay. So, Minister, a repeat offender who was convicted on child pornography was released early, rearrested for breaking his parole conditions, not once, but twice. He was then arrested a few weeks ago on historic sexual assault, then was granted bail again 2 days ago. This person was well known in Port Colborne. He played the organ in church. He played Santa Claus in community events. And he was a predator. Minister, in what world does the liberal soft and crime revolving door justice system protect the public or our children? So do you believe criminals have rights when they're committing the crime?
I appreciate the concerns you express, and frankly, there are bills before the House where, if your party stop impeding, can correct some of those examples. I am, frankly, I would say that it is a bit disingenuous.
I'm sorry, that's the end of your time.
Wow. The gaslighting, folks. So here seems to be the issue. So the Liberals are now accepting the fact that the Conservatives are going to be using these clips. So rather than tell the truth, they're gaslighting in these clips in an attempt to gaslight the Canadians that actually watch them. So Mark Carney took power in March of last year, held an election, and rather than work through the summer, because Parliament had already been prorogued for 2 months, and then we had an election, so we lost another month. So 3 months were lost in Parliament last year. They came back. They passed a piddly little tax break for Canadians. And Donald Trump was such a threat. Remember, he said this was the biggest threat in our lifetimes. And the criminal justice system needed such attention that what did they do? They went on vacation. They rose in the middle of June, and they didn't come back until September. And Gary and Anasangri sitting there trying to scold the Conservatives, saying, well, if it weren't for your party impeding our bills, pardon me, you guys are the ones that want to talk about C9, that want to talk about the religious censorship bill. You didn't want to talk about bail reform until the Conservatives and the entire religious community in Canada forced you to. You don't want to talk about that. You don't want to implement amendments that are actually going to serve the public interest because you keep voting them down. And you're going to sit there and try to lecture the Conservatives on impeding your bills, on preventing this legislation from actually going forward to help public safety, to protect Canadians. Wow. Well, let me tell you, he's in for a pretty rough ride after that comment.
Another theme that you brought up in response to Ms. Cody, that your government consistently brings up day after day after day, is accusing the Conservative Party of obstructing criminal, bail, and sentencing legislation. I don't know where you were at 1:30 this morning, but I was in this building passing Bill C-14. We sat for 9.5 consecutive hours to make this a priority. I then wanted to make a priority of Bill C-16 to get rid of the Jordan issue, to deal with mandatory minimum penalties, to strengthen offenses dealing with intimate partner violence, and every attempt that we brought motion after motion to deal with Bill C-16 as a priority, your government voted it down. So let's set the record straight who really is obstructing their own legislation. It is not the Conservative Party of Canada. You had 7.5 months to bring forward critical legislation to make a difference in the lives of intimate partner violent victims. And you waited literally to the last minute to introduce legislation, and now you're delaying it. Shameful.
Well said, Mr. Brock. I imagine most people watching this are cheering or clapping their hands. But this is the reality. Liberals don't give a damn about public safety. If they did, this would have been addressed long ago. Long ago. But we are creeping up ever so slowly on the 10-year mark. It's only a couple of years away since they introduced C5 and C75 and introduced the principle of restraint. How many Canadians have suffered because of that? How many people have lost their lives? There's only one answer, and that answer is too many. Too many. We've heard story after story from folks that have been destroyed by this, families torn apart, people living in fear because of this. This isn't sensationalism. It's the unfortunate reality for Canadians across this country. And the Liberals are now trying to say, well, it's not our fault. Nothing is ever your fault. It's always somebody else. Despite the fact that your party has been in power for over 10 years, nothing is your fault, apparently. It wasn't Justin Trudeau's fault. Now it's not Mark Carney's fault. Well, I hope Canadians that voted for the Liberals, that are swing voters, are finally starting to see the reality here. And the reality is that the Conservatives seem to be the only party that actually care about public safety. And you see that in the data. Whenever there's a Liberal government, they introduce soft on crime legislation, and crime drastically increases across the country. And then when the Conservatives come back in power, they introduce tough on crime legislation, and the crime levels plummet, public safety drastically increases. Gee, it's almost like it's a policy issue. It's almost like it's an ideological issue. Well, hopefully, Canadians are starting to pay attention, and they're starting to see which party is serious about public safety and which party is just trying to pander to votes.